Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. Let us know where you're coming in from. I see we've already got quite a range over here. We've got Boulder, we've got Mexico, Toronto, lots of Barcelona, Madrid. Very cool. Welcome, everybody. I'm here with April Welch today, and we are talking all about managing your finances inside of Notion. I'm extra excited because I feel like finances is one of the few things that I don't do in Notion. So I'm quite excited to hear what you have to say about this, April. So welcome. Thank you for being here today. Why don't you give us a little bit of a background? Because I know you've been using Notion for a while. I know you consult with people using Notion. Obviously, you're managing your finances in Notion. Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about your sort of descent into Notion?
Right. So the biggest thing that I want to say, from the get-go, I'm not a financial expert, and that this is, I was thinking about how to explain it, and kind of a year ago, a little over a year ago, I found Marie, and I went all in on Notion. I was looking for a solution because I was duct taping like Evernote and Google Docs and Todoist and Asana, and I was able to throw all that out. Um, but the biggest thing about the finances for me was as I was throwing out all these other productivity systems, I was kind of backed myself up into Notion with my finances. So I, among many, hate to do my taxes for my business. And I dread, usually about February, my husband starts nagging me of like, oh, have you gotten that done? And I have tried so many ways to do this. It's just not a habit that I was really creating. And I live in a really small town. So our banks here aren't as with the times
Mm.
technology wise. And so I tried Mint. I feel like I tried one or two others where it would like sync everything for you. And I found that I was undoing or fixing the automation more than I was using the privilege of the automation.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to get my taxes done and had been living in Notion for probably about 4 or 5 months at that point and realized, oh, well, if everything's over in this Google Sheet, that should be easy enough to move to Notion. And then, oh, I can do this, then, oh, I can do that. And so it really started with a business taxes home for all of the stuff. And then after I got through tax season, I was like, huh, okay, so maybe I could put my personal stuff in here. And I will say, the big thing about everybody's wanting the API for Notion. And as a productivity expert, I am totally on board with things that are going to make your lives easier. But I have to say, when it comes to this side of my life, I prefer non automation. And that was really the kind of what this all came to when I decided to put all of my financial stuff in there. Because I'm not, I believe in you need a budget and, the tools that teach you how to budget and help you figure out how your money is spent and where it goes, and so that you're financially stable. A lot more, I think, of what I'm doing is more tracking, even though there's some elements in there that are bit budgeting, like doing a roll up so that I can see how much I've paid out in bills, right? But I'm ahead of the curve in that I now know where my money is. And so when I was done with the tax prep, I had kind of made this let's just break all the barriers down. Like last November, when I knew I was going to have to do my taxes, and I knew I had spent all year not doing what I had set up for my habits, I was like, gosh, something's got to give. And as I was, looking at 2020 prior to what we even knew was going to come, I had made this decision that I was going to be so much more intentional about my money in 2020.
Hmm.
What a year to choose to
How
do it,
many
right?
other people, yeah, had that as
Right.
their plan for
And
2020?
so I had gone in kind of setting the system up for that intention. And yeah, I think that's like the big piece of it is that I really accidentally stumbled across a lot of the solutions that I now have in place. So
Yeah,
hopefully that
that's
was not too long-winded of an answer.
no, that's great. That's perfect. And yeah, I'm curious if there's anything. Let us know in the chat if you're already using Notion to manage your finances or your budget or anything like that. I always love to see what people are already doing. I do this for a basic sort of monthly budget, like what are the fixed expenses, what are the one-offs and that sort of thing. But day to day, I'm not really in there, but I like it as a place to plan ahead of time, kind of what are my upcoming expenses and that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how you're using it, what things and sort of best practices you figured out and what's working for you. So
Yeah.
yeah, feel free to dive in, show us whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's jump in. Okay. And
for
it's really funny
personal.
because it asks you which Chrome tab, and we were joking because I have like 50 tabs open, so I had to find the right one. Okay, so you know you can see me. You there yet? Oh, looks like it's frozen a little bit.
Not yet.
So while it
Blank
loads,
screen.
no. While it loads, what I will share is I'm actually going to show you my stuff. I had thought about doing a mock-up of, a blank one. It says that I'm there. Here, let me try stop and redoing. And I realized that in order to truly give you, I know that office hours, at least when I come to office hours, I expect to see behind the curtains, like show me
Ideal,
the
right? You're seeing real world
yeah,
data. Yeah.
yeah, show me the skeletons in your closet, right? There we go.
The underwear drawer we've said before, right?
And so I decided that I basically made a mock-up of next week, and then I can walk you through, how things morph in and essentially what my weekly dashboard looks like, which is where I live, and how the finances go in. So I will admit right away, I'm a toggle queen. The moment that Marie had learned from someone else how to put columns under toggles, in my mind just exploded and there was no turning back. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so this is the view for my month where I come down and I put in the different items. And so you can see what has already gone in for this month. And then what I thought I'd do is kind of scroll you back up. So this is my weekly dashboard. And on my properties, I only have 3 actual properties for this database, and everything else is a relation or a roll-up. And like I said, I mocked up some stuff so you could see things filled in. And so what you can see is like the bills that were paid essentially next week. And then if we had a payday, which we don't happen to, that would go in there. And then how much I paid out in bills. And then my business finances is a separate one. I haven't made any money next week, and what the bills going out next week look like. And then these are just some other things that live in this dashboard, like when I'm working on my continuing education stuff, things I'm reading. I decided to make an adulting database so that I could kind of get these, my hack for the recurring kind of stuff. And then the projects I'm working on have a home up there. And then I have this really fun shared database with my best friend because, there used to be a TV guide, and now it's really difficult to figure out kind of tracking what you're streaming. And so we have made this huge database of stuff that we're watching, and we leave notes. And so this is what I ideally will watch next week. So then coming down, I have, each day is a toggle. And then the only tool I use other than Notion is Google Calendar. And that's where I do work with I know that, this bill comes in every month on the 8th, and that goes into the calendar. And then when I go to do my weekly, I spin up my agenda, and it takes me maybe 20 minutes a week on either like a Friday afternoon or a Sunday evening. And I just go into my Google Calendar and I bring over whatever's in there. So essentially my calendar becomes the holding place for things that need that either recurring or like where my consulting calendar goes in and things like that. And so the ones that are underlined, I've already put in. And then when I see on that day that it's comp, then I scroll down to the financial section below and I put it in. And then I have this little trick where I just do this little check mark that I can then toggle this back up, or like when this day is done. That way I don't have to reopen. It just shows me that I'm done and it's off. I'm very much about I don't want to see something if I'm finished with it. I want to be able to close it down. That's where the toggles were, a huge help for that. So if we go down, and I left Sunday the 13th, Netflix that I still had to put in. So this is where I get geeky. And I was telling Marie too that, I went into some places and noticed a lot of people use a lot of formulas, or, they get really deep into the robustness of Notion. And that's really fine. But I was all about the simplicity. So if I know on Sunday that I'm going to be paying my Netflix, and what I do is I put it in from the calendar, and then that day I will go and I'll look at whatever account it's pulling from. The really interesting part of this was that prior to doing the intention setting around my finances for 2020, we had like an identity theft scare for my husband's credit card. And I realized when I went in to double check the charges for that we hadn't looked at that account, like gone in and actually looked at charges in like 2 or 3 months. And that's, that was the danger of everything being automated. It was like, I knew these bills were getting paid. I knew about how much we had. Like, I kind of knew where we were, but I didn't have it, down to the penny, basically. And so with this process and system, I'm in those accounts at least once a week because something's getting paid or being pulled out. Plus, then it keeps me going in there looking at, we have this charge, and we have to be careful this time of year because my husband's credit card is, I saw a couple Amazon charges on there and I was like, okay, just not going to look at that, And so here's the properties that I have in the template for the family finances. And so I have, tags for the month, and I just have each month. And every property has been created based on how I want to manipulate the information, or a way that I want to filter through something. So the date that it's paid, we picked it on the calendar, so that's already filled in. And then there's a lot of properties here. So using the template, and okay, don't freak out. This is like, everybody knows when they create a database in Notion, the heavy lifting is in the setup, right? So I do have a ton of templates in here, right? These are all of the bills. And so I did take the time and go through and put them in. So then I just come down, I choose Netflix. The one thing I wish Notion would work on improving is when I click on this, it doesn't fill in the title, right? Yeah. I can't have it like that stuck title in there. So a tip I have is whenever you do a template, just put what you want that to say down in this part, and then just cut it and paste it. But the nice part is I only have 2 things I have to fill in now. So I'm going to go and say my month is December. And then my week is going to be attached to next week, which ideally this would be this week when I was doing it. And then everything else is filled in already. So the amount, and this is because it's stuff that is, standard price. The amount, I do have it broken down. There's a tag for due between like the 1st and 15th, or the 16th and 31st, because that's how our paydays work. So then I can go in and I can look at what did we pay out? Is there something that's missing? I have just a text field for the day that it's due, so that I can kind of, look at where those due dates come in. The expense categories. And on the personal side, it's not as much about my taxes as it is about, this was something I brought over from Mint. I thought it'd be kind of fun to see, like, how much did we spend on streaming services? My husband works as a firefighter about 2.5 hours away, and we tend to spend a lot on fuel. And so I always want to look at, how much did we spend on gas throughout the year, the month, things like that. So I did pull some of that. The payment account, because we have different payment accounts that we use, what year it is. The notes I put in there for things like, I actually did it this week, our insurance payment changed. And so I'll put what our normal payment would be down there, and then I'll put what we actually paid. That way it just gives it a landing spot of if there's a change or I need to make a note to myself.
And does your husband use Notion too, or are you mostly kind of doing the management of this?
So God bless my husband, but he is not a technology person, and I would love to get him into Notion, but I highly doubt that it's going to happen. Although I do bring it up and like impress him with how I know things right away. And then I have also put in here like subscriptions. I had a huge fascination of subscription boxes the last couple of years. And so if it renews monthly or annually or 6 months, and then also if I've canceled it. And then I have a separate database for credit card payments. So when I put in a credit card payment, I can tag it over to that card. If it's an income, it goes here. And then there is the formula of the balance. So it's minus 1735. And that's it. So really all that stuff is pre-filled in. And then when I come out, you see that it automatically goes in the calendar. And this is kind of for me, it's the bird's eye view. But then where it really helps is to come up to the top here. And this is where I guess I'm kind of a hybrid bullet journal, is that now I can see what bills I've paid. I can see how much we paid out on, weeks where we've got an income. You can kind of see the change there because, of course, those are also the weeks we pay our mortgage. And it just automatically fills everything in for you. And then I will show you too. So right now with the season, I have my gifts database, which I need to go and actually add that. So you guys have a page that I created that's got resources, and I just put the 2 financial things on there, but I'll add that gifts database too. Everybody was really excited about that last year when I created it. But this is just like what we've bought so far. And then I have views set up so I can see how much I spent on each person, how much I've spent, overall. And yes, my husband is getting a broom and dustpan set. It's an inside joke. Good thing he's not technology. He doesn't see his Christmas present. Yeah. And then the other thing too is all of these databases, in order to live in the template that I spin up every week, I have a master page that's called financials. And that's where all of my databases live as like that root holding spot. So then if we come down, I do have, so CC payments this month. And I went back and forth with the different ways to do this. Do I put it all in one or do I break it out? And what I have found ultimately is breaking it out in a second one works better for the information that I want from the data. And so I'm able to put in like our credit limit. I have a formula that shows me what a third of our credit limit is, because that's kind of where you want to stay with your balances. And then I can, so let's see. Let's just bring up a new one. I can show you the properties in here. And I'm pretty sure this is the other template that I put in there. So again, I put the month, when it was paid, how much was paid, the confirmation number, and then I'll, while I'm in the account, I'm making the payment, or if I'm, adding an auto pay, I'll put what our balance is. And then this will automatically be filled in of what our credit limit is, and it'll automatically shoot out our 33%. I always know what my APR is. And so then also too, if I feel like, we've had this card for a while and I want to lower that, like it just cues me for that. And then who the account is for, myself, my husband, or I have a 22-year-old son. So for the last several years, we were helping him, at age 16, he and I got a card together so he could start establishing his credit. And then where it's auto paid from for auto payments, again, due date. And then this from is also our bank accounts, but I found that separating out, I have a template for when it's auto paid, and then I have a template for when I go in and manually pay it, because the other part of this is that I'll let the auto pay go through on busy months, but then I go back in and I make like that bigger payment, and I needed to segment if it was, an auto pay or if I was actually being intentional with it. And then it's a place for notes. If it's an auto pay, it gets checked, and then I can easily see what's already been paid this month through auto pay, or if I haven't gotten to it yet, what year, and then the statement, payment receipt, and then this is where the family finances comes in. So what I opted for was 2 separate databases for these payments, but then linking them. So it still pops up, it still is part of the family finances, but because I wanted so much more from that information of, if I'm making a payment, what is that 33%? And it just didn't make sense to add that into, an overarching big picture. Yeah, and then our templates for that. And then my business finances, very similar to how my personal ones are done, very similar properties. And then I have a separate thing for income so that I can then take these two databases, put them in a Notion page for our taxes, and send them off to the accountant. And that was kind of fun, teaching the accountant's assistant how to use Notion to get the information and like breaking their habits of what they're used to. Like everything comes in paper and they get, oh, QuickBooks is the other one I tried to do. They get all these reports from QuickBooks. And I'm like, I can do that. All you have to do is see this little view here. You just click it and it's there. You don't have to do something a bunch of stuff. So that's, I think that's my finances. And then this turn the toggle clean again. This gets spun up every week. So I stay in this page for my weekly dashboard. And if I have to look at some of the money, I pull it down. If I'm working on continuing education, I pull it down. Like everything is embedded in those toggles and nicely put away.
Yeah, the sound was going a bit off for me too, Lucia.
Oh no, really?
It's better now, but you were muffled a little bit, but hopefully
Oh, really?
it,
I'll just move the mic a
it
little closer.
stays okay. I know someone was mentioning it feels scattered, for example, like there's this design like accounting software, but I think that is the beauty that you really can customize this so granularly. And I think when you're maybe looking from the outside too, it can seem like messier because maybe if you're not familiar with how the whole process or whole system looks, but again, it can be so tailor made to the way that you need to see that information. So I think that's just something important to remember, that it might seem intimidating at first, but you get to streamline it and make it work for the way that's going to make sense for your brain.
Yeah, and I'll say it probably does seem a little scattered until you see the process from like step 1 to step 10. So step 1 is I spin up the database. Step 2 is I go to my calendar and I put everything in. Step 3 is the day of. I have all of my tasks and then I have my finances right here. And so I just quickly, basically, it's like balancing your checkbook back in the day when we used to do that. I take it and I go down and put in what that day called for and check it off, and then it's done and the templates are created, and it's I don't have to think about that unless something comes up, of course.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. Is there anything else that you want to dig deeper into or kind of show us
I
your
know I'm
favorite?
looking at what I had. And I'm curious, for those of you that use YNAB, are you finding a way to incorporate what they have taught you there into a database in Notion? Because that I've never used them, but I went and watched a few of their videos this week because I know a lot of people do, and I realized, oh, you can accomplish what they're talking about somewhat with the roll up, and even in the databases.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I have a couple databases in Notion in terms of even like a donations chart, so I can kind of see which ones are recurring monthly, recurring yearly, and one-time donations. And then I've got personal expenses, fixed versus variable as well, and all of those are tracked in there. But it's not something like day to day. I'm not doing imports in there because I think I still use the banking tools that kind of show me, oh, how much am I spending in each category. But again, I think budgeting is so personal too, right? Like some people love that manual factor of YNAB, or just even if you're writing the data twice, like it's somewhere else, but you're also kind of putting it in. I think it's so important to like figure out what makes sense for your own habits and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think also too, the ability, at least for me, because I was spending so much time maintaining what was supposed to be automated, I felt like I was really frustrated with the having to do something that was supposed to be getting done, versus this with setting an intention behind it. I know when I go in and I do it, I've seen it. I know where I'm at. It serves that purpose of intention, but also that I can now come in and be like, oh, okay, I want to see how much we've spent on car insurance this year. And I know that I could do that in other places, but a lot of times when I would go in and do it, let's say in Mint, there'd be all these multiple times that it was put in. I'm like, no, we didn't pay that 3 times in March, you know? And so there was a trust factor for me that continued to be broken with the automated things. And I think also too, people that are, I call us notioneers, you know, those notion brains, I think that we like the relationship that we have with our data, right? And so the ability to say, I have a segment of data and this is where it lives and how I view it or pull it, or, you know, I love geeking out over my Christmas one. You know, it's like I have ideas in there, but then when I assign it that I'm buying it for the gifts, it's like, oh, okay, check, 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 you know?
We had a question pop in about, I see pivot tables to see revenues and expenses month by month. Is there a way to do that easily in Notion? Or so I use pivot tables to see revenue and expenses month by month. Is there a way to do that easily in Notion? I mean, I definitely do that, but I don't know if you specifically, like for example, you can switch your calendar view to a
Yeah,
table view, and then you can add sums at the bottom as well and
yeah,
filter those. So you could certainly say,
yeah,
show me everything from December,
yeah,
filtered by one time or recurring or whatever
yeah,
status, right?
exactly. So down in the business, um, oh, I guess I do have it on that, don't I? Here, let me just,
I know it's tricky too, and you're like, I'm showing my personal data here.
I know, I was like, I'm just going to take a leap of faith and, you know, you guys can just see how much I pay on things, right? So I do have for December, you know, each month I have a view and it'll show what my income was. Um, the expense categories are only there for tax purposes. But then I do have a sum of how much I've spent throughout the month. And then I can easily see, you know, the other thing I should say too is I have a very simple business model. I'm a coach. I have, you know, my services. Um, I've been working from home before it was the thing to do. You know, I don't have a lot of expenses. A lot of my expenses are things like, you know, internet software. Um, and I mean, it's been fun to teach my accountant that that's an expense category, right? And so I have a very simplified thing. If you were dealing with inventory, if you were dealing, like, I know that there are so many other very robust um, ways that you would budget. And that's why I was like, okay, let's be really clarifying on that. This is tracking my money. And sure, I get budgeting answers out of it, but it's not true budgeting with, like, you know, the insane positive and negative, you know, bookkeeping things that happen in there. It's not to that level. It's much more, this is where I put it in. What do I need to get from this information? Oh, I can create that in a view, or, you know, and I even have on some things, I might have a Kanban to see, like at the end of the year, this will be the first time I've done it all year. I can go through and create a month view, and then I can see, like, okay, month, you know, Notion. Okay, yep, I did pay that every single month, right? Or, you know, up in the streaming, you know, okay, so for entertainment, you know, Netflix, we paid that, but show me what all of our streaming, you know, was. And so I think between the tags that you put in and then the views and filters that you can create, that you can create a lot of what you can get out of um, things like Google Sheets and Excel. I feel like Notion is all of those things on steroids.
Yeah, it's like there's some limitations because it doesn't function like a real table, say in
Yeah,
Sheets. But if you
yeah,
know how to design it, then you can, yeah, do quite a bit with that information for sure. Like budget and actual, right? And like looking at the difference, like, oh, I'm frequently spending this percentage more each month, right? So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, appreciate the demonstrations of these coaches and the
Yes,
trickiness in keeping their main data private while sharing their process. Yeah, it
yeah.
is always a little tricky doing these demos. You're like, ooh,
I
hope that's a
know.
safe
And
view.
I told Maria, I was like, I'm just going to show you guys, you know, the whole thing, because, you know, it just wouldn't have the context if I was trying to show it without day to day life stuff in there. So
Yeah. Yeah, I
it's
used to do a lot more daily tracking with even like services and product sales and things like that into my journal. But at some point, I was like, this it feels I don't know, overly, like it's not really adding a ton of value. Like I can
Yeah.
always go to my different systems to see that information. So it didn't feel like I needed to see it at that level. But certainly with the business finances, we do a lot more like, okay, each month, like what are we spending on what categories and that sort of thing. So it's always cool
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
see the
And I
difference.
think too, I noticed that you had tweeted about, how much you had paid women-owned businesses. It'd be so easy to set up a tag with those vendors, and say
Yeah.
women-owned, and then you could easily pull that view of here's how much I paid women-owned businesses,
I
and
love that idea. Yeah.
yeah, I think that there's a fine line between working your system and your system working you.
Hmm.
And I know where I have landed is a migration from, what you initially were doing this time last year. We all kind of jumped on that where it was the month, week, or year, month, week, and then daily.
Quarter day. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and I did do that, but I found that for me, and that's the beauty of Notion is like you get a peek into how someone else is doing it and you glean out the stuff that works for you. Um, for me, I wasn't really using the year. I could accomplish that with just a simple tag. And then I wasn't really going in and looking at the month either. And I just found I kept living in this week view. And I tried doing the journal, the daily journal, and it wasn't something that I would normally do. And then I kind of like you had said, I had tried to do it and I was like, well, this isn't really adding any value and it's taking more time to, kind of track and do. And so that's where, instead of my week dashboard being a collection of databases that I've embedded in different ways, for me, when it goes into the database and you have to kind of click in and deeper into screens, my mind just kind of discards. And so I needed something that was this hybrid between having stuff that's up in front that I could collapse. And then I track my projects. They're over in the sidebar and they have their database, but they get to be put away until I'm ready to work on them. And then when I click deeper, I'm in that mindset. Whereas my weekly dashboard, I just needed kind of that overview of, okay, what am I doing next? What's the direction? Where's my focus? Oh, this is the money that we're, being intentional about today or this week. And so that's where the process was kind of built and born from. And some people's weekly dashboards or weekly pages are insane. I mean, they're gorgeous. They have these embedded, weather and clock and all this other shit. I'm like, those are great bells and whistles, but they're not something that I am trying to gain when I need to see what I need to be doing next. To me, that's more visual clutter than it is like getting to the point and keeping me focused and, streamlining that system of, for me, for productivity.
Totally. Yeah, and one thing I've started doing is making, there's like the weekly planning and reflection page that embeds the most recent week, embeds the most recent 7 days. So that's just the place where I'm going when I'm in like weekly mode, monthly mode,
Yeah.
quarterly mode. It's like I only go in to the quarter page once a quarter to do
Yeah.
that work and then kind of dip out. So again, you can really choose, what context are you in?
Yeah.
But day to day, probably like you, I spend most of my time in that week view because that's kind of I feel like that's the most your brain can kind of handle at one
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. And, I've also figured out, so I have a weekly sessions with clients. And so I have I run my entire coaching business in Notion, and you can, link to a page and then it gives you a block. And what I realized is if I just copy the link and I hyperlink their name, then I have it there and I can go to where I need to be for, for that specific session. And I'm either in my weekly dashboard or I'm in with my clients on their customized dashboard that I've built with them. And those are really kind of the two things. And I guess the other thing that might blow everybody's mind is that the only thing that lives in my sidebar, like this is my active week, is usually it's just my active week, these resources, a shared thing, and then my databases. And this is it.
Wow. Yeah.
And I know
Danny
if
would be
people knew
proud.
that, it'd be like, you know. But again, it was a matter of paying attention to where was I, what was I doing, how many times was I clicking to get somewhere, and that whole like, I need to tweak this because it's not working for me. But I'm not going to tweak it so far that I'm like geeking out on being a geek, right?
Procrastinating or
right?
procrastinationing.
Right.
I love that.
Oh, I'm trying to look at some of the comments in here.
Yeah, Patricia was saying tracking spend with supplier diversity is critical for those who's certified with WE Connect International.
Mhm.
Super cool. Yeah, I love that idea of actually doing a better job of tracking that. Um, yeah, really cool.
And
Lucia
that's
was
just
saying,
it, is, looking at what are your intentions? Where do you want to have your intention, and what do you need to clean up, mentally, visually, in order to accomplish that kind of stuff. And if you're the kind of person that you want to see your weather up there and that makes you happy, it inspires you, then do it.
yeah,
There's no right or wrong way of Notion. That's the beauty of it.
yeah, I love that. Yeah, the only other thing we really we kind of have I don't know, every Sunday. I don't know if you use the Profit First method or if folks here are familiar with Profit First. I love that as a business bookkeeping method, but we use that to kind of track distributions and balancing the books every 2 weeks. That's sort of like our Sunday every 2 weeks. We do that process, and so we have a whole template for all the books and quick links to accounts and things like that. That's been really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm,
Do you
I'm kind of
use?
scrolling back through here, and there's a comment in here too. I think the thing about Notion, having the background that I do in productivity, and I always tell people I have a deep understanding of your relationship of how you have your relationship with your decisions, and we come into Notion with this box that we've been put in. And the overwhelming part is that Notion's like, no box, no walls. It's just this big blank canvas, go crazy. And that's intimidating, right?
Mhm.
Because there's no structure to kind of hold you up. But then once you do kind of figure out your structure, and I think the comment was like, oh, mine's set up similar to how other software is. It's like, awesome, do that. Get in there, play with it, get that going, but don't restrain yourself. And that's the
Yeah.
limitations that those softwares have, is it has to work a certain way for their program to give you what they say they're going to give you. So once you're in there and you're like, I don't like how this looks, or I don't like how this is doing that, like, tweak it. You're the master of your domain when you're in Notion, and just kind of figuring out how to play with it. And, I guess the best tip I can give is, if you're going to change something significant, just duplicate the database first and then have like a test version of what you're doing. That way, if you totally mess it up, you still have the original. If it totally works, you can go delete the old one.
Totally. Yeah, I think people get kind of stuck in that too when they download a whole bunch of templates, move them into their spaces, and they've got so many different templates, but they're not, template is not the same as a system. And,
Yeah.
Notion obviously does require you to do a little bit of that build. And again, that's going to be so different, different brains, different styles of wanting to take in information.
Yeah, and I'm very much a hybrid between paper and digital. And I think what Notion's given me is the ability to go completely digital, right? Um, because I can trust it, that when I'm looking for something, I can find it. And that's been a big thing too in the way that I have built it, is um, I built what I look at throughout the week, and then I went on the mobile app, and I was like, does this flow the way I need it to if I'm, you know, if I'm ever on the go again, And so, but oftentimes
Oh,
it's in the evening when I don't want to be in front of my computer, right? And I'll bring something
right.
up on my phone, like, I want to look at tomorrow's agenda. And because I do all of that ahead of time, like either Friday or Sunday, I already have my decisions made for the week. I'm not working on planning throughout the week. I have it set, and then as things come up, I add them for sure. But I don't have to go, oh gosh, what's tomorrow? Am I going to have time for this or that? It's all preset and ready to go. So
Very cool. Some people feeling called out in the chat.
I know, I saw
Yeah.
that. I was like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of an art to know what is simple enough, and I think
Yeah.
often people do the route of like, whoa, way over engineered it, pull it back, right, and just getting it simple enough for your needs.
Well, and
Yeah.
my true confession, y'all, I went all in on Notion October of 2019. I first saw Marie as a guest on Francesco's product. Oh gosh, what is it?
Keep Productive channel.
Yes, Be Productive. And I was like, oh, okay, what is this? And went and I looked at it and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to give this a shot. And in an attempt to figure it out, of course, back then there weren't near as many templates as there are today. I was playing around with stuff and I have downloaded, tons of people's templates, but I've been known to spend 4 or 5 hours trying to watch one of Marie's like 1 hour office hours or tutorial or whatever, because I would literally go through, and I took like 3 weeks and went into a vacuum and moved my entire life into Notion. And again, it was because I was trying to put I was running a social media school at the time, or I guess I just finished it, and I wanted to put all of the stuff in there from Kajabi. And in order to figure out how to collect it, retrieve it, all that kind of stuff. So I would sit with a video and I'd have it split screen and I'd be watching, like, how is something set up? What were the
Like,
properties?
pause, wait, what did she do?
Yeah, exactly. And then I would go over and I would do it for myself. But then I would go and like put my own information in, look at how it was, and then go, oh, I don't need that property, or oh, that doesn't really work. Oh, I need to add this. And that was kind of how I came up. Like, my standard on anything is usually to put a property with the select for months, tag for, property for select for a year, right? Those are the first two things that usually go in everything. Again, because I'm, trying to retrieve data that I want to see monthly, yearly, whatever. So yeah, my big confession is that Marie and I have spent a lot of time that she doesn't know about together getting my Notion all set up.
I love that. Esteban was saying, can you talk a little about security? Many of the members of our community are hesitating because of this topic and they want to be sure their information is safe. And yeah, I don't know your thoughts on this, April, but I don't put any, like, there's no banking details or credit card detail, like nothing that is sensitive like that inside of Notion itself. So it's more like the numbers, the names, the just enough information. So I'm certainly not a security expert or anything like that, but I'm quite careful about not putting, SIN numbers or anything like that, social security numbers, things like that inside of your space. So
Yeah, I don't have any account numbers or passwords or anything like that in mine. I and again, this also goes to the manual piece of it, right? I'm going into my credit card account online where it's all secure, and I'm basically checking off that, yes, this cleared on the credit card, and it will, clear when I pay the payment. But there's no connection between banking or finances. It's simply, we paid Netflix. You saw what it was. We paid Netflix 17, whatever it was. And that goes into the sum that minuses out. And so here's how much money, came and went for us this month. But there's nothing in there that we're, after that scare last year, we're like locked down on our our identity stuff.
That's fair. Yeah, and I think that's sort of a good best practice. And just like you, we have a books database, and it just has a date and the preparer, and then everything is just kind of inside as checkboxes, like insert the last known balance date in the from category, and it's just a whole bunch of checkboxes to log into PayPal, do these 4 things, log into Wealthsimple, do these 4 things, and it's just part of a process. So yeah, keep it general numbers. I think sometimes we'll just reference the last 4 digits, right? It's like move money from the account like 786 whatever, and that just gets checked off, and that's easy peasy. So accounts list will just be like, revenue, Canadian, these 4 digits. That's it. Wouldn't it be so amazing if you could, password protect blocks? I'm not sure if anyone saw Ben Something's fancy little workaround where you can use global blocks to actually password protect parts of a page. So that's something to check out. I don't know if anyone here has that link, but Ben Something on Twitter posted this recently, so that is one way to kind of
I'll have to go check that out. Yeah, because I'm getting ready to teach 2 Notion, I guess, workshops, webinars. I don't know really what to call them. And oh my gosh, it would be so nice. And I really was debating, because the second one I'm doing is how I run my coaching business, and I'm giving all of the databases, like how to do client cards, how to put their invoices, like the processes in the databases for the processes of, basically you have your client card, and then how to do the customized database and how to spin it up, what goes in it, and all that kind of stuff. Oh, there it is right there. Perfect. And I was like, gosh, this is just so much that I'm giving in this webinar, workshop, whatever it be. It would be nice to kind of lock it down. It's something that I'm having people pay for. And so the only workaround I came up with was they can pay for the workshop in Crowdcast, and then they give me what their email is in Notion that they use for Notion, and I'm going to manually add them to the page that has the templates. And of course, from there, it's like the beauty, I think, of the Notion community is if you say, I'm selling this, please don't share this link. I think for the most part, people will respect that. And so that's the only workaround that I could come up with, is just trusting people's good faith. And so far, it seems to be a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Like I don't know if this particular hack that I sort of sent through will be helpful in your circumstance. Something to be careful of: if anyone is selling templates, you generally don't want to have global blocks inside of your templates, because if someone deletes a global block after they've made your template and that's connected to your original, like that's where it gets a little complex. So be very careful with global blocks. And also, for example, I used to use use global blocks to do fancy inline navigation inside my templates, but then when people were clicking on it, it was taking them to my original space. I was like, whoopsies. So there are some like funny little workarounds like that could be good to, test with a small group of people that you trust, because that can be an issue.
So when you say global block, is this a hack for if I create a template, I can put it on a global block, and then when I edit that, it edits it where they've downloaded or duplicated it to their workspace?
So the one that I've shared is changing block level permission. So let's say you had like only your coaches could see this block over here, and like administrators could see this block over here. To have it that actually on a page, those folks wouldn't see that content there, while some would. So you can actually at the block level kind of choose permission. It's a little weird. It takes a bit. Kat, definitely check out the link that I posted. I think that should cover the global block situation. I don't know if he actually called it global blocks in there. He does actually. Yeah, it looks like more tips under Notion guides. Global blocks, reusable tasks, global block link automation. There's a few things there. It's not actually like a feature of Notion, but it's like kind of a fun, like, surprise.
We're all going to be headed over there. Oh my gosh, it's so fun. Somebody's traffic is going to spike on their site. It's like, oh, Marie must have mentioned me today.
Maybe. Well, I mean, he posted on Twitter, and I definitely retweeted that because I thought that was a pretty cool discovery for sure. Notion VIP, William Nutt has some great content around that stuff too. So definitely dig into those as well. I feel like Ben is really very generous on Twitter too. So often when people ask him like, hey, how would I do this thing? He'll figure it out, and then he adds it to his big library of just tips and tricks and stuff. So lots of free learning there through Ben's content.
Awesome.
Highly recommend. Yeah. Any other questions that you guys have, or things you want us to cover? I know there's like obviously stuff outside of the finances piece too that we can always address if people are curious.
So true, Mark. I think I kind of made a list of stuff, and my biggest thing was, in the true nature of being a motioneer, that this is just the way I do finances. And especially not being a financial expert. And the reason that the manual piece is there is because I set the goal of being intentional, right? And so you may not want all of that, working in maintenance and intention behind it. But hopefully there's something in each of the templates that you can glean out. And to get back to kind of the template collector, right? I would say pick a template, download it, put it in there, take a look at it, and pull out what you would use, and then just delete the template. You don't have to have all of those in there all the time.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'm excited to, yeah, we just added the
Oh,
call to action at the
good.
bottom. So today's resources, you can check those out and have a
Yeah.
play with it, see what makes sense for you. Feel free to delete properties. I feel like people are often afraid to edit it. I'm like, delete, add,
Yeah.
mess around,
Yeah.
play with the
Yeah.
different,
And, like I said, I think the biggest thing is to, if you're afraid of something, just duplicate it. Like make that second copy,
yeah,
go and muck with it. And then if you realize you've gone too far, you can always go back to the original and figure out kind of which part of that did I really mess up.
yeah. And again, you can always roll back changes too. A lot of,
Yeah.
beginners don't realize you can always go back into page history and you can roll things
Mhm.
back if you made a mistake or something that you didn't mean to do. And
Yeah.
I just call it the sandbox, right? Name it sandbox and just toss your databases that you're playing with in there. And once it's ready, you can activate it. Non-finance question that popped in. Can you share one category from a table? I have a content calendar and I want my co-host to see only our shows, but I want all my content in one place. Unfortunately, there is not an easy way to limit a view and to only share a view with certain folks, but anything that you only want your co-host to see, I would make shows a database that you share. You can still connect your shows database to other databases, and as long as people only have permission to the shows, they'll only see that data there. They won't see any of the other relations that you've connected to. So I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, April, but generally you can't be like, only show these pieces of this database. It's kind of all
Yeah.
or nothing.
This question comes up a lot with the coaches that I've shown my system to for my client, dashboards and stuff. And I think this is where it does make sense, because I always ask people, does it make sense for this all to live in one database, or does it make sense for it to have a couple different databases that are related to one another? And so that's the question I would ask is, does it make sense to have your shows actually be a separate database so you can be sharing them with who they need to be shared with, and then relating them back into like a master view for you?
Yeah. Yeah, it does sound like if that is a thing that you only want to be able to share shows with people, I would make those as I'd make that as its own database. It is
I guess
one unfortunate limitation. Yeah. Go ahead.
one workaround though could be if it's one show, I always call it a cell. So like when you open up, the card basically, and you open it as page, you could share that
You
page
can, yes. You can share
individually with the
individual page
person,
entries with people.
right? And so within the database, each row is a page that you could then, they won't see the stuff above because they won't be able to see the database properties and things like that, but they'll be able to see everything that is below the comments section. So that would be one way maybe to work around that,
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it
I
totally
think.
depends on your circumstances, how many different contributors you have, and what
Yeah,
that looks like. But you can definitely invite people into individual entries in your database.
right.
And those will just kind of show up as pages on the left-hand side if they're in your workspace, kind of viewing those pages.
And
Yeah.
make sure to watch your permissions if you want them to be able to put it in, whether they use Notion or not, whether you want them to be able to adopt that, whether or not they can duplicate it as a template, toggle that on and off. You will have to make it public. And then for me, like with these, I allowed you to make a template or duplicate this template, but it's not in the Google search engine, because I don't, this is something for people who are coming to this event. It's not out there for everybody.
Kat was asking, could I create a dashboard with a linked and filtered version of your table? Yes, but Kat, if that person does click on the database name, they will technically have access to everything else. So while the dashboard view of it can be filtered, as soon as that person does click on the database name, ta-da, they can sort of access other tasks, which I know is an issue if people are sharing their master task database with a client, for example. You can show the client a filtered view, but as soon as they click on tasks, they will have access to all the other tasks in your database, which I don't think is ideal. So,
Yeah. The other thing too is that if you're doing a linked database into a new page and they don't have permission to see that database in the first place, they won't see anything there. So I can show you what we're talking about. Let's say, for example, you know, let's pretend that this is like a resource. There's a movie on Netflix. And so what we're talking about is I can open as page. gosh, it's going to go slow.
It's always like, oh, you're streaming? We're just going to slow right down.
Right. And so I have all of these properties here, but then if I go to share, I can do the share here. I can allow them to duplicate it as a template, or I can turn that off. I can allow the comments and editing, but when I go and I share it, I probably would, add them here. You could do the link. It depends on if they have their own Notion or not. And then they will have that long tail URL to come into this one page. So I would say if it's within that database, so for me, this is my family finances database, and they want to, each show is a different person that you want to give access to. So let's say it's the guest to that. You could open that particular thing up and share that page only.
Yeah.
Hopefully that makes sense.
Especially, Kat, I don't know if you're talking about sharing with clients in general, but I usually do create, each client kind of has their own entry, right, in my client's database. And then each client has their own custom dashboard. It's basically like a portal that they have access to. But I actually create them their own task database. And then I embed my master in the same page. So I can kind of see my own stuff and their stuff in the same spot. And I can also take their database and put it into other databases. So if you want to unify information across clients, you can still do that in one place. And you just have to kind of paste those databases into your own client dashboard, if you will. It takes a little bit of getting used to the permissions.
Yeah, I do mine a little differently. I have very similar in that all of them have their own task project management stuff that I help them with, but that all lives first in their dashboard. And so how I've explained it to my clients is think about who you want to have permissions and start at their level and work your way back. And so that's kind of what you're talking about too, is like it lives there, but I don't ever put my task list in their stuff. I actually bring their stuff over. And that was the thing about a month ago when I was like, oh, I'm really noodling this brain teaser around this. And what I ended up figuring out is I just had to create one database that was a collector for all of my other databases. And then that was the one that I connected to my stuff. That probably sounds confusing for people who aren't used to us talking in these depths.
Kat was saying, I have a weekly YouTube show with a co-host. I want to have a shared database with them that has a calendar and details, but I want to see those shows alongside my work. Yeah, and depending on how your co-host is using Notion too, you could certainly connect those shows to your own master task database, your own project database, but they won't be able to see that relation. So you do have some options there. And Kat, you could always, message me on Twitter. I can share with you some people who do something similar with their content, like co-hosting YouTube stuff inside of Notion. Another question popped in, Ebert. Just a thought, would Notion develop a way we could connect our project from the web, giving us ability to connect to specific data folder? I'm not sure if I follow that. Connect our project from the web, giving us the ability to connect to a specific data folder. I don't know if that's like API related too, or you can, I'm not sure how to answer that.
Disconnect from the web.
Disconnect.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand that.
Giving us the ability to connect to a specific data folder. Yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that, Ebert. I'm not sure I totally understand the question. If you can add more
for detail. As much as we're all, really hoping for that API, I meant to say disconnect. Yeah, we're all waiting on bated breath for that API for things like Zapier and stuff like that. But, also remember too, that automation comes with a cost too.
that is true. That is true. Like I know somebody was commenting like that my weekly agenda recurring event process was ridiculous. But to me, it takes like 5-10 seconds to do. And then that way I can see the tasks that I have each week. It's not just like a thing you can ignore. I'm manually dragging it into the calendar and it's like, do you have time for this? It's like a check-in in a way. So sometimes I don't necessarily mind that there's that little bit of lack, but there's
And
lots
that's
that's missing.
the same thing with my weekly dashboard too, is I'm sure for people looking at it for the first time without me walking through the entire process, it's like, whoa, okay. Like someone had said that seemed really disconnected. And it's like, but it takes me, including putting any of the upcoming events or links or whatever, 20 minutes. On average, I spend 10 minutes a week planning for next week. And, that's just the way that the process has been set up and seems to flow and work for me. Your recurring task hack is a game changing. Don't let anyone tell you any different. Aw.
That's what I thought. It works for me.
Yeah, and the way I do my recurring stuff is that template that's spun up has stuff that's, recurring each week is already put in there. And then all I have to do is look and here's my agenda for the day. And then I can toggle open and close what my days are. And, often I'll be like, okay, how much mental energy do I need tomorrow? Like how far can I push myself today?
Yeah. And that's why, again, all my tasks have that, like, how much brain power focus is this
Yep,
thing going to require? Um,
exactly.
and I'd love to hear from folks too, or even yourself, April, too. Like, I think there's been a lot of great money books too that have really kind of opened my eyes, different budgeting techniques. And I'm always curious, people's best book recommendations or resources. Feel free to add them in the chat if there's a book that's kind of, shaped your thoughts on money or budgeting or anything like that.
Gosh, I always tell everybody that I came of age with Oprah. And so I haven't read a financial book in years, but I would be willing to bet that if I went back and like really thought about this, it'd probably be Susie Orman.
Okay, yeah.
I do remember one of the most pivotal like money things for me. And I was never taught how to manage money. I had to teach myself. And I think that's why also coming up with this process and system was the trial and error of it. It was something that I could do because I've been doing that for myself for a really long time.
Yeah.
But she was on Oprah and it's a time I have my kids are 22 and 26 now, but they were tiny at the time. One of them's on my hip in diapers. Then she was on stage and said something about take your wallet out right now. And so she's like, everybody take your wallet out. So the whole audience, women are pulling their wallets out of their purse, men are, so I walk over and I get it. And she's like, now open it up and I can walk around and I can tell you which one of you are financially responsible and which one aren't. And I was like, oh God, I'm so glad I'm not in that audience. And essentially it came down to if you physically respected your money, you were financially responsible. And I'll never forget that. I went from, having something where I was just shoving stuff in, to actually getting a wallet where my bills were laid out. And, it's like, oh, I respect you guys. Here you go,
Wow.
And so I think that was one of the most pivotal financial things that I was ever, it just hit me at the right time with the right information. And just that whole idea of if you want money to be there for you, you have to be there for it too. And so I just really bought in on that. And then the second thing I'll say is for those who have kids, I've given this story to so many parents. My older child is, he's okay with money, but my younger child, oh, that man, I'm telling you, at 22, well, to tell you, at 22, he bought a brand new 2020 Toyota Tacoma in May. And then he just closed on his very first house at the end of October. Like he is my super responsible, financially set, grounded child. When the kids were younger, we built the house we live in, our dream home, and we wanted to go on a family vacation, but we were tight on money. We just put everything we had into the house. And so I went and I got $300 cash. And I said, all right, we're going on, like it was like a 4 or 5 day road trip around the state. And I had them pick one place for each of them that they wanted to go see. We had gotten like this wacky places in Washington and they picked something from the book, right? And I said, all right, I've paid for a hotel room and then we're staying with family for 2 nights. And so lodging is taken care of, but food and gas and anything that you want to buy comes out of this cash. And so, I was like, we really probably should take a cooler of food. We should, and I was kind of teaching them the preparation part. So we get on the road and I'm in a Honda Pilot, so decent mileage, right? Gas mileage. We go to get gas the first time. And I'm like, all right, you guys, here's your envelope. This is all the money we have. So if we run out of gas, like we're walking home, right? And they were probably 6 and 10 at the time, pretty young, maybe 7 and 11. And so came time to pay for the gas. And I was like, okay, guys, go in and pay the gas attendant. And so they go in and they take the money out. It was probably like $60, right? So they come out and they get in the car and we go to leave. And my younger one is back there taking inventory, of the bills, right? And he's like, "Oh my God, like that was almost
That was a
a
lot of
third
money.
of what we like, I mean, he didn't say a third, but oh my God, that was so much." And so I was like, "Okay, well, that's all you have left for the next 4 days or whatever it was." And immediately my younger one was like, all money
How do
was,
we keep this?
guarded
Yeah.
and secure, whereas my older one was kind of like, "Oh, okay, well, we'll make it. It'll be okay." And that's kind of how they've grown up to be. But I always credit that moment of that road trip for both of them having a financial education of understanding that it's finite, and because we go so digital and we don't, physically
We don't
handle it a
see
lot of
it.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times it's like we don't see it disappear, and they both had that experience to do that. And so as a parent, I would say if you can do that with your kids, absolutely have them be handling and managing the money. But yeah, Susie Orman, I think, is the one that I probably got the majority of my education
Cool.
from, but that ages me a bit.
No, there were a couple other Suze Orman fans in there too. Dave Ramsey, if you want to get yelled at about your debt, that's a good one. Depends on your style.
Right? I don't even know really who else is out there, just because, yeah, there's the books, but also I think there's a lot of really good YouTube channels and
Yes.
blogs, and yeah.
Yeah, if there's any Canadians here, Shannon from the New School of Finance, I always plug her stuff. She's incredible and she has such funny videos about like crying during tax time and stuff. Like her
Oh,
marketing stuff is so funny. It's very
oh yeah.
relatable.
I
Yeah.
can tell you, I usually have to take 2 weeks to do my taxes. And back when I drank wine, there'd just be scattered empty wine bottles in my office. Yeah, it was a very depressing time. So
Yeah.
21, 19, 17. All right, a nudie notion,
Nerdy.
nerdy notion there. We could totally hang. No, I'm so excited though. I got to tell you that, like, I'm looking forward to the end of this year. Well, we're all looking forward to the end
Aren't
of this
we?
year.
Yeah, aren't we all?
But I'm looking forward to when my husband says, "Are your taxes ready?" And I can be like, "Yep." And I didn't have to sit in my office for weeks to get it all ready to go. It's all good.
Oh my
I
gosh.
sold my
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah. Nice work, Mark. Smart move. Oh, love it.
Oh,
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you. Thanks everybody for coming today. I
yeah,
hope that
yeah,
the templates are useful. You can click that
yeah,
resources button if you want to check them out. Look
yeah,
forward to
definitely.
your feedback. And if there's others too that have, oh yes, Shannon's Worry Free Money is like, I know it's written sort of from a Canadian perspective, Mark.
I know.
Worry Free Money is such an excellent book. If you do have debt, I say Living Debt Free is I think it was published before or after that one. Living Debt Free, amazing. Once you've conquered your debt, move on to Worry Free Money. Such a good book. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, be so you don't have to sell your family members. That would be ideal. Oh my gosh, you guys
Oh, I
are
love
you
that.
guys are awesome. But yeah, thanks so much, everybody, and thank you, April, for sharing that template
Yeah.
as well. And
Yeah, there's
oh, go ahead. You were
two up there. There's the credit card and the personal finances. I also included the upcoming Crowdcast webinars, and I'm getting a coupon. It's in there for next week's. And then if you are interested in any of my services, there's information in there for that too.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Thank you so much, April, for coming,
Yeah.
and we'll see you on
Thanks
the
for having
internet.
me.
What's the best place for people? I know you're kind of moving away from social, you were saying, so I'm curious. Where are you most active, or what's the best way for people to get in touch?
Um, that's why I put the page together. So what Marie is referring to is I started out this year as a brand reputation coach for marketers in social media, and I'm ending the year pivoting, doing the pandemic pivot, and I'm walking away from social completely. I'm still, going to be doing brand reputation, but from a very holistic place, less the
Mm-hmm.
logistics. And I'm just relying on my last 25 years of work experience. I was a professional organizer for a decade. Um, and sat for the very first certification in that industry. So I'm just kind of pulling everything back together and rebranding under Clarity Coach. And because I use Notion, I put all my clients in it, I'm including Notion coaching, but it's just a piece. I'm much more about, like right now, I'm rolling out the Finding Clarity in 2021,
Yeah.
which a lot of my clients are really excited about. And so, yeah, I guess my website or email, or just take a look at the page and see. I did put something up on Twitter today. I am in the network a ton. For those who are unfamiliar, we're both in the What Works network, and that's kind of replaced my social media.
Yeah,
And
online
again,
communities.
that whole idea of, being intentional behind your activities and your attention and things like that. So things may change in the next couple of months, but for right now, being able to walk away from social media has felt pretty good.
Yeah. I think a lot of folks are kind of thinking about that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of been the big topic. I know you will not find me on Facebook, and that's kind of what I'm coming to terms with. Is I think I'm just ticked off at Zuckerberg.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
it's just I'm ticked off. So you can try me on Twitter, but I'll be honest, I don't know that I'll respond right away. So I
Fair
don't have a
enough.
good answer
Yep.
for that. This is where you
Yeah.
find me. You
Yeah.
come here.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful
Thanks for
rest of your
having
week
me.
and weekend. And yeah, we'll see you on the internet. Bye, April. Thank you.